feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming to you Monday evening. It's May 12th after the Wolves win game 4, 117-110. That did not feel like what the final score was going to be. I'm here with Britt, Robson at Chase Center and recording immediately afterwards for some immediate reactions. Britt, I feel like the story of this game is the two different halves, and particularly given that it was a Wolves win, right, the real story was the second half and how they played. They were actually down 58-60 at halftime. And then when the benches cleared with 4 minutes to go, it was Wolves 112, Warriors 91. So it was 54-31 basically in the part of the second half that really mattered. We saw, Julius Randle got them there to 58-60 at halftime. He was excellent again, but I feel like kind of for the first time in this series, in that second half, we saw this Wolves team start to operate more at the peaks of their abilities, and a lot of that had to do with the corner Anthony Edwards and the group at large turned at halftime. The players, we just got out of the press conferences, the locker room, and they were speaking about the sort of that message and the taking it too casually, acting like the series was over in the first half, but as they're kind of wont to do, they can kind of turn quickly and shift gears, and did. What most stood out to you about how they shifted gears in this one?
The fact that nobody said we changed this, we did that. Kuminga was hurting us, or they were killing us on the boards, or there was so many second chance points. Right. So therefore we took Jaden off Butler and put him in a position. All they said was we did the same stuff we did before. We just did it better and harder. And so it was really a testament both to the fact that they had what amounted to 3/4 effort. You don't know it at the time, but that's what it was. And they were still able to be 2 points away from a pretty desperate Golden State Warriors team, which goes to show you, and props to you. You said this after game 1, I think, that essentially this series was over. Maybe you said it after game 2. Yeah. But in any case,
and it's not. It still isn't over, but it's starting to feel the most over now.
Now he says this. Well, I argued with you vociferously for about a half an hour that exactly the opposite position of that. So, but the truth of the matter is, when the Wolves got serious, the third quarter was 39-17. Yeah. And Jaden McDaniels had 1 rebound in the first half, and he had 6 rebounds in the third quarter, and he had 6 more in the fourth quarter. Right. Remember if Jaden McDaniels got 5 rebounds, it was like, hey, Jaden McDaniels is starting to hit the boards. Right. He had 13 tonight, and he had 1. So, essentially, he had a dominant game on the boards. And when I asked him what the difference was, he said, not really any difference. And when I asked him if it was, Jaden's a man of few words anyway, but the idea, and so did it affect your coverage of Butler or whoever you were on? And he said, not really, just, kind of paying a little bit more attention. And then he also said, I got some lucky bounces, but the lucky bounces, they were not there to get those lucky bounces in the first half. You're right about the fact that Randle came into this game having had a playoff triple-double, which will make you confident. And it was very clear. He had at least 2 of those. Okay. Shots where he pulled up in the face of 2 defenders and launched it early in the clock or something, and bang, there it went, And so that type of effort really helped them. And then I just think what happened is they were out rebounded 25-15 on the boards in the first half. By the end of the game, that had pretty essentially been erased. The second chance points were also lopsided in their favor, in Golden State's favor. the Wolves kind of flipped that around. So it really was a situation where Golden State was playing for the chance to even up a series and not have a series potentially be over before Steph Curry can even retake the court. So there's some desperation there. And the Wolves were trying to rustle themselves up. And in the second half, they meant it. And when they meant it, the game was over.
Yeah, it was like a smelled blood in the water sort of thing, I thought, in the second half, which surprised me because they looked in the first half kind of like a team that was okay with not taking the 3-1 lead and running some of the risk of Steph coming back and all the just kind of like feeling themselves and not feeling like they had to get 12 rebounds in the second half. Or I mean, I thought it was Ant, Jaden, and Rudy is the switches that flipped in the second half off of what their first half was. You just did Jaden. I thought, Rudy, it kind of reminded me of like last year when it was the fourth quarter and it was like winning time. And Rudy would just get to like another level defensively. It just, just kind of deleting some possessions for the opponent. And you're like, oh, okay, Rudy's actually impactful. And that was kind of, smaller, and as was Jaden's too. But then Ant really had he was the real wave there. He had 14 points in the first half on inefficient shooting, and then you tap me 6 minutes into the third quarter and you go, you already doubled his point total. He's at 28. He came out and whatever it was, we got like 3 different tellings of whatever happened at halftime, but whatever it was, the group came out playing like they smelled blood in the water, saw the opportunity to go up 3-1, heading home to be able to have the chance to wrap this up in 5. And I'm just, again, Randle got them there, but they needed that to kind of carry them the rest of the way. And I thought Ant really turned a corner and started looking like the offensive juggernaut that he really hasn't looked like in this series outside of the second half of the last game. There's been more halves in this series than that have been looking more like he's going through the motions, kind of navigating whatever it is the Warriors
not playoff Ant.
Yeah.
It occurs to me, most people would say, the Wolves are good at wearing people down, and it's because you look at their size. But they wear you down in so many different ways. And we saw it with, LeBron and Luka and the Lakers in the first round. Definitely seeing it in this round. And, it's fair because the Warriors are trying to compensate for somebody who is so valuable in so many different ways. But Rudy Gobert's presence wears you down in a certain way. You've got to make sure about the rim protection. You got to make sure to keep him off the roll. You've got to make sure that you can figure out a way to score over him if you have to. Ant will weigh you down in a certain way because you got to have the doubles always coming. He's dangerous from 3 points, but he's also dangerous if you give him the gap. He'll shoot the gap. He's mentally taxing on a defense. Julius Randle is physically taxing on a defense. He will bang and bang and bang, and sometimes he'll go on that like steamroller left-handed drive, then bang things in. But that in and of itself is gut-sink. And then Jaden McDaniels just will wear you out if he's guarding you. And if you're the best player like Jimmy Butler is for them, you saw him. The difference between game 2 and game 4 with Jimmy Butler was just, he was a shell of himself. He was worn out.
Minus 30 tonight.
He was minus 30. And so there are a variety of ways this team can wear you out. And what has been impressive is that a team that much was made of the fact they lost more clutch games than any team in the NBA, and they occasionally let go of the rope. They thought that they'd earned something they hadn't earned yet. They are continually setting the nail. Their second quarter net rating coming into tonight, or second half net rating coming into tonight, was the best of the remaining playoff teams. Their fourth quarter net rating was 36-6. Now, a weird fourth quarter where this is very similar to the Rockets game, actually, in terms of the fact that the Rockets, it was a 3-1 lead for the Warriors, and the Rockets took a big lead, and the Kerr put in almost that same contingent of guys, and they rallied, and they got within like a dozen with 4 or 5 minutes left, and Kerr
apparently 7.
Kerr didn't bring him in, yeah. And so it is one of those things where that they made that rally against the Houston team, and then you turn around and you see they make the kind of the same thing. They're really good at being like kamikaze kids and running all around trying to make turnovers and everything, and it made the score ironically so close that somebody might look at this, who hasn't seen the game at all and go,
Right.
oh, okay, 117 to 110, maybe another workmanlike victory for the Wolves.
It was 54 to 31 in the second half, or the score is 112 to 91 when Kerr cleared.
And that's really what the game was about. Mm-hmm. When the Wolves had to put the hammer down. That's the thing. So thus far, after game 1 and these last 3 games, let's just simplify it. When the Wolves have needed to win, they win.
Right. No, absolutely. But then they win by changing their approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's I think it is a credit to them that they can change their approach. Yep. It's a little frustrating that they start with a poor approach, oftentimes. Right. And I think, there's 2 games in San Francisco with Ant. I was very frustrated by the way he started the game, and there was, particularly on defense. And I think there's just that corollary with him. If he's, I don't know, something has to get him going, or he needs, I think he said after the last game that it was Kuminga dunking on him, got him going. Right. And I think it was whatever happened at halftime of just,
according to McDaniels, or no, it was Nah who said, we realized what was at stake.
Right.
And, we realized this is what we had to do. McDaniel said everybody was kind of talking, and he maybe talked a little bit more than others or whatever. But it just makes sense that if you can go 3 quarters for a half, and then you say, hey, we're 2 points down.
Right.
But if we put forth the effort, we can beat this team. And
it felt like that right away in the third quarter.
As you're saying that, though, even though you haven't played your fullest, you've worn down an overmatched team who has the mental strain of needing to try to come back, and has the physical strain of just not being as talented without their do-everything guy. Curry spaces the floor. Curry puts tempo in the game. Curry gets weak side rebounds, 6 or 7 a game. Right. You take away 6 or 7 backcourt rebounds a game, that's a lot of work for everybody else. And the fact that the loss of Curry created that work, and that the Wolves' composition of who the Wolves are created that work, is why they wore out, and why I would expect, even with some time off, and then they come to Minnesota, I think that it will be interesting to see whether or not they can get one so that Curry can make an appearance back in this series, because that's what it comes down to. When it happens on Wednesday night now in Minnesota, the series either gets closed out or it gets really interesting.
Right. I like the wear it down idea, and you went through all of that. I think that's particularly true against teams who want to play small against this Wolves team that is not small.
Right.
And you saw that in the Lakers series. There is a force to this Wolves team that it doesn't come in like one big punch, but it's like 40 body punches, over the course of time, and
working the body in a prize fight.
Yeah. And then the dam kind of breaks, and that's what happened in the third quarter. And it kind of, what I liked about the third quarter is it felt like they knew it would break, if they kept kind of going at it and tried, and elevated the effort, and it needed to be, it didn't need to just be Ant, you needed some Rudy there. You needed some Jade in there. Just not, like you said, not making adjustments, not X's and O's adjustments, making adjustments to your approach, and making more winning plays. There was way more deflections and just getting out in transition. And it looked like the good version of of the Wolves after we saw 2 quarters of is very much like the last game where the third quarter they just kind of
very similar, I thought.
Flopped into halftime. I mean,
Right.
Ant made that shot might have been a turning point too. He hit that buzzer beater
Right.
at the
and hit another nice long one about 2 minutes before that at that time was an important shot because they were like always within 5 or 6 points of each other. And then, Golden State was on the verge of having a double-digit lead, and that 3 from Ant was very important.
Absolutely. Let's grab our first break here, and then we'll keep moving. Today's show is brought to you by First Resource Bank, and First Resource Bank has locations throughout Minnesota, including their new branch in Minneapolis. It's downtown, right by U.S. Bank Stadium. First Resource Bank is FDIC insured, and if you are a small business owner, I know from my own personal experience that working with a community bank like FRB can do more to help you with your small business dreams, maybe more so than some of the bigger banks can. A hometown feel there at the branches. I was in there a couple weeks ago, and just like their approach and their willingness to be able to help me and help my business. So if you are just looking, and particularly if you live downtown, check out that First Resource Bank. It's kind of right by that Trader Joe's and by U.S. Bank Stadium there. First Resource Bank is doing a bunch of good things and in the community philanthropic endeavors. Again, they're FDIC insured, and also their owner, Tim Siegley, is a big Wolves fan. So we would, again, love it if you checked out First Resource Bank. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. I don't know how. I think your Julius Randle call that ended up working there, Britt. You called another big one. Oh, good. another big one for him. There is Game 5. When you're listening to this, you'll see that they're all up there already for the new picks up for Game 5. But also tomorrow, what are the games tomorrow we have? Is it Indiana and Cleveland in Denver and Oklahoma City?
In Denver and Oklahoma City, and that is it's a rare, not a closeout game.
Yes, yeah. Well, we also got to watch those to see that's going to impact when the next round starts. But just with Prize Picks, go look. You're sitting down about a half hour before a game starts, whether it's the Wolves or one of these other ones. Put $5 on it. Put a lineup together. Kind of if you've watched the game before, I think it's always kind of fun to have a feel for how this might swing. And Prize Picks, yeah, obviously for basketball, but all other sports as well. Put together a $5 lineup, and if you sign up using the promo code Dane, your account will be credited with a $50 sign-up bonus when you place your first $5 lineup. All right, Brett, let's I wanted to talk specific to this series, but also I think to the Wolves more broadly, just the impact of their 3-point shooting. I was sitting there in the third quarter, and I think at one point it was, here I have it pulled up. It was in the third quarter, and the Wolves had taken and made more threes than twos.
Right. They were 10 for 19 from 3 and 10 for 24 from 2.
I had it even later where it was 15 of 28 from 3 and 12 of 27.
Wow, okay.
Well, you turned me onto it with that one, and then I kept tracking it. Once they both got higher than the other one. But it reminded me of the Wolves Rockets series in 2018, where it was that Rockets
christening series.
Yes, yeah, where it was the Wolves were bringing a knife to a gunfight.
Right, absolutely.
And just couldn't shoot the 3 ball at the volume that Rockets team could. And the same is true about this. It's crazy to say about the Warriors, but the Warriors without Steph Curry, I mean, that is just beyond the Wolves kind of being like having more, more talent now that Curry's out. There's just a math advantage that it seems like they have in this series.
Curry made a great quote after Game 3 where somebody's saying you only took 23 threes. And he said, well, in order to have threes, you need spacing. And in order to get spacing, you need to put them in rotation.
Right.
Well, if you don't have the kind of 3-pointers, kind of 3-point shooters that can space the floor enough to get a team in rotation, you're not going to have open threes. And if you're not going to have open threes, it's almost like a chicken and the egg thing. Do you not have any space to shoot because you don't have 3-point shooters?
Right.
Or do you not have 3-point shooters because you can't generate space to shoot?
Right.
And that is the problem the Wolves present. I mean, one of the other nice things about them being long is that you have a DiVincenzo, you have a you have a McDaniels on the perimeter. and you have Rudy coming out, much further than he did in Utah, and is, Randle, and these are deterrents that a
you're saying
Curry,
deterring the Warriors.
in other words, the closeouts.
Yeah.
I mean, a Curry doesn't care about that. A guy, even a guy as accomplished as Jimmy Butler does. Jimmy Butler has never been known as a great three-point shooter.
Sure.
He's one of those guys that can hit him, and he's a veteran. He's a 14-year guy, and he's hit key three-point shooting. But if you're asking him to be like your natural guy, I would say on that roster, aside from Buddy Hield, Pods, has had a terrible series, would have been the other guy.
Right.
But it's kind of up to Buddy Hield. If you put Peyton 2 in the corner, he can hit some, but they have a problem. I think they had 8 of them midway through the third quarter. Eight made threes, and in the modern game,
they made one in the second quarter.
Yeah, well,
in the third, Warriors didn't.
Okay, in the third quarter, yeah. Let me look. I have the third quarter stat right up here. 0 for 6. 0 for 6.
They didn't have a player who made 3. Draymond had 2 for 6. Buddy Hield was 2 for 6, and then it was 1 from Peyton, and then the rest of the next 3 threes came from Moody, Santos, and Post, who didn't play.
Oh yeah, because
so it's really that they only
they were playing the fun times, the Looney
right.
Tunes, right?
Looney Tunes.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean it. But you're right. You go down 20. It's already desperate. You're already tired. How do you win down 20? You get stops and you shoot transition threes. Right. I mean, that's one of the formulas, and they couldn't do it. And they, and it reiterates. I mean, I want to repeat this again. I say it maybe every podcast by now that we've done with the Warriors, but Curry is underrated. Curry is known, he's a drop your jaw three-point shooter. He's a great three-point shooter. So good that it obscures all the other things he does. Aside from Kyrie Irving, he is the best dribbler in the NBA, in my opinion. He is one of the maybe the 3 or 4 best rebounding guards in the NBA. He is exquisite at giving and going, getting off the ball, cutting to the hoop, cutting to the corner. And whenever he does any movement on the court, 2 or 3 guys pretty much have 2 guys directly have to follow him, and at least one other set of eyes has to watch him. That makes everybody else's offense better. And when you're shooting a lot better and scoring a lot more, then your defense is better because the other team keeps pulling the ball out of the basket. It's the classic thing. But all of those things make Curry valuable. There's a reason why he's been the star on 4 championship teams, even though the likes of Kevin Durant is there. Durant actually kind of dinged his career that he had to go play with Steph Curry to win a ring. It kind of besmirched his reputation because, he had such help win a ring because he was Stephen Curry's teammate. So take that guy away to a team that already was kind of patching it together on the fly brilliantly by having Butler back. But you've got old guys. You got Draymond Green. You got Jimmy Butler. They are physical warriors in their mid-30s playing now in like their 6th month of the NBA season. There's the formula that it's going to be extremely hard for Golden State to come back on, even to the point of winning 1 game, let alone 2, let alone 3.
And so if that's true about the Warriors offense, as this series has made it pretty abundantly clear, it does just become about the Wolves offense being good enough. And the 3-point shooting was there tonight, but the other where the 2-point offenses come from, or what I mean, I know Ant had the big second half, but when I was making my notes about Randle in the first half, I was like, this is crazy. He's like the primary offensive engine of this team, and a team that's playing really well. And it's a merit-based engine of the offense. I mean, he deserved to be the engine of the Wolves offense. I mean, Julius ends the game with 31 points. He was 4 of 8 from 3, 5 boards, 3 assists. Wasn't as heavy of an assist game, but we were talking about this too while we were sitting there. He was finding guys open in the first half. They weren't making them. But I mean, I know this is kind of a stupid question, but like, what level is Julius Randle playing at? Because I think, as people are starting to, the Wolves are up 3-1.
Right.
Steph's not playing in the next game, and they could theoretically wrap this up. And now here you are in the Western Conference Finals, and you start assessing how much of what level of contenders the Wolves are, and how that normally works is you go down the pecking order of the team, and you obviously Ant has this superstar cachet, deserved, and then Julius is the number 2, right? And I, on name value, would go, I'm not sure that's a number 2 that's good enough to be on a contender. But does it feel like he's, whatever that threshold is of like a good enough number 2 level player, kind of feels like he's playing like an all NBA caliber guy right now. And he's been an all NBA player before. Like this.
Well, here's what I think. I think that the reputation comes second.
Mm-hmm.
I think what happens is that right now, Julius Randle's reputation is being burnished. A lot of people are thinking he's better than I thought he was. In fact, he's better than he used to be.
Right.
He's having the best year of his career. The next step is if they beat the Warriors, that's 2 series down.
Mm-hmm.
Then they go to either Denver or OKC. If that's a 7-game series, or if that's a Wolves victory, and they're in the NBA Finals, and Julius Randle is playing this way, well, then all of a sudden that isn't really as much of a theoretical discussion. It's a discussion of this guy is the second best player on an NBA finalist. And not only that, but he wasn't with the team that went to the conference finals last year, and he's had to be integrated on the fly. And now he's not only integrated, he's vital. And I asked him the question tonight after the game. He and Finch have this extraordinary relationship that really had to buck a lot of headwind from me and a lot of other people who cover the team, and from the locker room, I'm sure. I mean, Nas is like in the bosom of this Nas, Jaden, Ant trio, and
right in the bosom.
And so there was a lot of, if Randle's here as a rental, okay, let's see how he does as a rental, which is kind of what I think the vibe was in the locker room in November.
Mm-hmm.
And Finch wanted it to be more. Randle wanted it to be more for whatever reasons. And I think both of them had really honorable reasons. And I think both of them really thought that they could be really good for each other in a significant way. And they trusted each other. And so when I asked Randle about this, having a coach that gave him such a bandwidth for his skills, because in New York, they didn't want to see Julius Randle, as the playmaker he is right now. And they didn't want to give him quite as much. Obviously, it would have gone away. They went out and got Brunson. They went out and got Cat. It wouldn't be that situation now anyway. But the fact that he's doing this stuff on a team with Ant, that's extraordinary. And then the last thing I want to say about this particular part of this is that he was asked a question just about his relationship with Ant, and I thought it was a beautiful answer. I mean, he said, yeah, I know, that we're regarded as the 2 guys and everything, it's Ant. Ant is special. I knew he was special after I was with him for a while. He just makes you what my job is here is to make him great. I say, go out and be great, and I will have your back, and I will do that's necessary. To have a guy who is got coaching that allows him to flex all these different aspects of his game, and then also know this isn't my team. This is Ant's team, and I'm honored to be Ant's lieutenant on this team. I mean, I think where Randle fits in the picture is kind of like Manu Ginobili, Bruce Bowen guys,
See, I think it's beyond that though. I mean, he's playing like I think the real star players like Ant need more than that. They need the number 2 to be a top 15 guy. And so yes, I think Julius is fitting into a role beneath Ant, but it is a very, very high level player. The player that he's playing like now in these playoffs is again like an all NBA top 15 guy in the league.
right. But I think that when the Spurs were winning a lot of rings, Manu Ginobili as a sixth man.
Yeah, you lost me on Bowen, I think.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess what I was saying there was when you're part of a team that just, I mean, like Kevin McHale, where does he rank in things? Or Robert Parrish, when you're Horace Grant, when you think of these teams, and obviously the Wolves haven't won anything yet, so it's kind of a specious comparison. But what I'm basically trying to put forward here is that you have people who are in the firmament of a synergizing team. And Julius Randle could be getting 40 and 15 for a 500 team, and he would not have the shine right now that he does. The fact that he gets 24 and 12 and 10 assists for this team.
The flirting with the triple-double thing like Finch.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I get your point. I would not go there. I would not say he's a top 15 player in the NBA.
I'm saying he's playing like that right now.
I'd say that he is in the mix a lot. I mean, like, my point is 50 players can play like that for a month.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I guess so. I remember earlier in the season, or not actually, it was the end of the season when Randle was, over the last 21 games of the season, shot 40% from 3.
And then it was 16 and 4 or something.
Yeah. And I was, I started looking back at some of his past stuff and stretches of time in his career where he had been, really shooting it.
Right.
And the 1 year in his career when he shot 40% from 3 is the year he made second team All NBA, which would imply top 10 caliber player there. I'm just saying, I think Randle has a gear that maybe 49 other players do have.
Right.
He's just, I think we need to acknowledge that he's finding that gear repeatedly. Yes. And that's what, and I think that is what top 15 players do, is showcase that ability that 50 players have, but doing it more consistently. And what I thought, has stood out to me, especially tonight, is, I've been talking so much about, all right, you want Julius to go in advantage situations, right? It's not, there isn't Draymond Green on you. You've got to switch. You're going and almost with the goal of, all right, I got this mismatch. I'm waiting for the second defender to come to play make, because oftentimes, now he's kicking out for an open 3-point shot, which is a 40%, 3. That's 1.2 points per possession right there. But what he's doing is he hasn't needed advantage situations. He's able to go shoot 60% from 2 on Jimmy Butler, on Draymond Green sometimes, and now it's I'm reimagining, I guess is what I'm saying, what like the caliber of it was, because I was viewing him always as like the best thing is when he can get into playmaker mode by drawing 2 and kicking off of it. And if the second doesn't come, okay, go to work one-on-one, and you're already down there trying to get that bucket, and maybe you're going to make it 50% of the time. But he is just, it's just at a different clip. It's just in a different clip. At least maybe a little reactionary tonight.
No, but I get your point, and I don't want to deny your point. I guess what I would say to all that is a discussion that we should have 6 weeks from now.
Yeah, right.
I think right now what I see is a player. Nobody expected the Wolves to be 1 win away from a back-to-back Western Conference Finals trip. Everybody would have been satisfied with one series. Not everybody, but I think the general consensus is that this team wasn't as good as last year's team, and last year's team won 2 series. If you win 1, that's about right. At least you're not eliminated in the first round. And they handled their business against a higher seeded team with a high profile people. And then they obviously did it again with a lot more injury luck. And so we don't know how the Warriors sees, that series would have gone. I had the Wolves in 7 games, but I think it was going to be a rough series. I think that they have a fantastic defense, and we just got through gushing about Curry. But you can only play who's in front of you, and they are 7-2 in 9 playoff games. They have eliminated a lot of the things that held them back. They are not clutch time. They're not turning the ball over, and they're not doing what happened when Jaden McDaniels said quite flatly, we played down to the competition. They put a bunch of scrubs in, and we played like it. But when it matters, they have poise, they have composure, and they have a lot of skill, and they have a lot of physicality. They have a lot of height. They're well coached, and it's a really, really good locker room, as Randle's quotes about Ant tonight just again demonstrate. You have those things, and I still think OKC is the best team in basketball, and I will believe that until somebody beats them. If Wolves and OKC are the matchup, I will pick OKC to win that series because I've seen them play this year. But I am no longer imagining that to be a slaughter. I'm no longer imagining that to be like,
right.
And part of that is what Denver has been able to do against them, and part of that is what I've seen the Wolves be able to do in the last 2 playoff series. And just to know that teams are funny. They peak at certain times in certain ways. This team has grown so much since January, and then grew again, right after Randle came back, and they had that meeting in Phoenix, and, it became a March and April thing.
Yeah.
And since March and April, same thing with the Pacers. The Pacers are 34-14, and they're marauding through.
It is the teams that peaked at that time that are doing the best. The Cavs really fell off the final quarter of the
absolutely.
Season. To the OKC point, I was always really concerned about that matchup for obvious reasons, but specifically to tie to Randle, he really struggled with that because there weren't advantage situations for him to find, right? You're guarded by Jalen Williams, and it's a switch, and now Dort's on you, or Caruso, or whatever it was.
Yep, and Hartenstein back there at the rim, or Chet as a shot blocker. Right.
I'm just saying, if you want to start reimagining the ceiling of this team, I think you do it through reimagining what Julius Randle's ceiling is and what he can, what he has. I now have a belief that he has a potential to do more than I would have said a week ago.
I agree with that.
And that just opens up some possibility or some doors that I thought were pretty bolted.
I agree.
Against
I
the
agree.
Thunder.
And also Denver has shown that OKC may they may be too cold of a team. They may be too clinical of a team. They may not be able to have that emotional juice. You listen to Dagnall after a game, you listen to the team, you watch Shea, you watch the people who are crucial to that team. And with the possible exception of Dort, there's not a lot of emotion there, And so when you have teams that, kind of thrive on that a little bit, and it's the postseason, and you've got a guy like Ant, and you've got Randle, who's got some passion to him, McDaniels, the slow burn guy.
Yeah.
It would be, if it comes to pass, if and when the Wolves beat the Warriors in however many games in this series, and then you're winding up looking to see who's going to win the Nuggets Thunder series, and let's say that goes 7 games and it's a war, I think most observers who've watched most of those games would expect, if not 7, it's going to be 6, and it's going to be a war almost every time. The Wolves are good at exhausting people, and if somebody comes in semi-exhausted anyway, then you're past that, and then it's beginning to look like the two biggest impediments in the East, the Cavs and the Celts, which isn't to say either the Knicks or the Pacers are chopped liver. In fact, they could be kind of seen on the same tier as the Wolves.
Right.
And so all I'm saying is it's become a really fascinating postseason, and this is bringing it full circle. We're going to get a sense of exactly how reliable Julius Randle's status as a potential All-NBA player can be by how he performs in these next few weeks. And what's funny is, we used to say, well, how he performed before the All-Star break for his trade value, at trade deadline, and how he performed so he can be shelved in free agency. And now, or how he could perform so what can we get back in a sign and trade? But what he has done with those arguments is rendered them like you're thinking much more now in terms of how is he going to have quality teammates that the front office can also afford because they're going to sign him. So the narrative is flipped there, and Julius Randle's the one who flipped it. And games like tonight, the first half especially, is how he has flipped it.
So it's Ant and it's Julius, and those are the two engines, and the other X factor engines for this team are the bench, but also I think probably even above that, the defense. And because when the defense is the defense, and they're maybe like last year's defense, so they're playing like one of, if not the best defense in the league, there's a way that can protect the Ant engine faltering or the Randle engine potentially faltering against Williams. And I'm wondering where I'm at, but I'm asking you how high of a level I think this defense is at or can be at, because they have been pretty consistently shutting down this team, pretty consistently shutting down the Lakers team. And I know we're doing the thing of poking all the holes that are real holes, obviously, in this Warriors team without Curry, and we were doing it in the Lakers series too. But how far away is that defense from being the third superstar player? Because again, in the third quarter, when Rudy Gobert was activated and engaged and came out of halftime and looked like the guy who might not be scoring for you, but definitely deleted, 4 or 5 buckets that would have otherwise gone in if anybody else was defending that action. I just felt like I got a little bit of that taste of like, okay, I forgot about this. I forgot that, and we got to know that feeling well from this Wolves defense. And Rudy is almost always involved in that, and broadly in these playoffs, Rudy has been relatively uninvolved. But yeah, we felt it again tonight, right?
We did. The thing that it gets to the point where the balance of how this team operates, every team has its own personality. And the personality of this team is not a defensive personality necessarily. I have been saying this since the beginning of the postseason. The most exciting thing about this team is its offensive versatility. Now, does that mean that the defense should be ignored? Absolutely not. In fact, this is a team that is capable of being a top 5 NBA team at both sides of the ball, which is what you really think when you think
contender,
real chance at getting a ring. And the emergence of that makes the offense the new toy and maybe devalues the defense.
Because last season's team did not have that gear.
Exactly.
They did not have a top 5 offense gear.
And therefore, I think the commitment to defense, it is great to think that you can be totally all in on how you do things. But if you look at the Celtics, there are some games where their offense is obviously what they are flexing in that particular game, and the defense is okay. It's not fantastic. Then there are times when they throw all those wings at you and they just shut you down. The Holidays, the Whites, the Jaylen Browns, the Tatums, and they get you that when you go, oh man, that's a great defensive team. OKC, same way, both ends of the ball, though mostly on defense. They are a team that hangs their head on defense. The Warriors of all teams are that way. Since they got Butler, they are a defensive team. The newness of the Wolves being a better balanced team, I think, and the fact that we have seen dominant Rudy Gobert, we don't get a chance to see the Rudy Gobert that any reasonable person would have named Defensive Player of the Year last year. We haven't got a chance to see that as much this year, and some of it has to do with the whole dynamics of a kind of a different locker room, but some of it has to do with the dynamics of sometimes you got to let the offense be your guide.
And Finch is doing that. Like he is
Absolutely.
so clearly like I felt like last season there was always the like
Talk.
tie goes to Rudy,
Yeah, right,
you know,
right.
and
Oh,
you know,
that's true.
and
Right.
leaning on that or
there was also the talk
ignoring.
that sooner or later the offense would come through.
Yeah,
And it never did,
all they needed to do was trade their defensive-minded center for Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. No, but it's I do think, and I've tried to ask like a couple of questions and stuff like that to players. I asked Rudy about it a little bit at shoot around this morning of, he's really playing like a bench role, and he got up to 30 minutes tonight, but I don't know, maybe not bench role, but not as one of the primary cogs. And we were absolutely 12 months ago at this time would have been like, oh, well, they're playing the Nuggets at this time last year, and he's guarding, he's out there and
he's
really big lurking off of Aaron Gordon
and making the difference in many respects. And we were shocked when Rudy checked out.
Right.
The team played such good defense. And then when Rudy got back, oh boy, Rudy's,
yeah.
In the middle of the game tonight, I turned to you and I said, because we were watching Rudy kind of trying to, again, find his way to fill the gaps, find his way to be the best version of Rudy on defense and the best version of Rudy on offense. And I just said, it's so different than it was the way he's being used now versus the way he was used in Utah, where they literally built a franchise around him on both sides of the ball. I mean, their offense was totally geared toward that role and that pick and roll and those putbacks. He has had to eat a lot of prestige and not have that be. Rudy is a cog now, but he's not the main cog. And he's a proud guy. I mean, I'm really glad he had that 27 and 24 against the Lakers to close it out. And I really hope, and getting back to your point about how good is this defense, I think this defense, the difference in this defense compared to last year is that the consistent elite level of defense is not there. But you can see it happen. You can see glimpses of it. You can see like when they want to squash somebody, and they find themselves in that rhythm and the shots aren't falling at the other end, they can win a rock fight. They won a rock fight the last game against Golden State. Right. The defense is as important as it always was, but in this case, it is important because it needs to be able to be there and yet not have to dominate, if that makes sense. If the Wolves relied on being nothing but a dominant defensive team, they would be less balanced, and therefore they would be less able to be a real viable contender for an NBA championship. They would be unbalanced. They would again have the top-rated defense in the NBA, maybe. I mean, I don't know if that could happen, but let's say they dedicated themselves to that, they would certainly be in the mix for that. And they may be back down in 17, 18, 19. And I remember saying to you in the middle of this season, I'll take that over like 6 and 12. Give me something you can hang your hat on. Well, now what this team can hang their hat on is balance, the best of all worlds. And you don't get that without a really good defense.
I think it does have defensive versatility too. And I think that's
agree.
what we've kind of learned in this postseason,
That's
because
a good point.
it was you look at the regular season numbers, there's a huge gap in the minutes when it was Rudy was on the floor versus when it was the Reed and Randle front court. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but it doesn't, at least to my eye tester feel watching the game, it doesn't feel like as big of a drop off when Rudy comes. It's definitely a drop off.
Right.
But that's good. That's some defensive versatility where it's enough, sometimes more than enough defense, even if Rudy isn't on the floor. But to the versatility point, I am leaving open the possibility in my mind that if they do advance to the next round, that now Rudy's playing against a team that actually plays big people.
Right.
He might be more like the version of Rudy, or we feel the impact of Rudy like last year's postseason. And that doesn't mean he's going to be perfect offensively in last season's postseason either. But if there's one thing I feel confident about with Rudy, he's going to stay locked in and is likely to maximize what he has, and what it is that he can do. And I'm holding on to him as also an X factor for the next round, particularly against a Denver or Oklahoma City.
I like the X factor idea because he's been forgotten.
Yeah,
you're no longer saying, well, you have Rudy Gobert. That's not the first. Obviously it's Ant's team now, case closed. But now you hear all the reporters after this game, the out-of-town reporters and the national reporters saying, Ant and Randle, that's the narrative now. The two scorers, how they mesh together.
To beat Oklahoma City, it's going to need to be Ant and Randle like that, with Rudy doing his star player version of himself, which is, defensively. It could be a series where you get back into running some pick and roll. They're not, they just haven't had any of that. It's been all just, functionally Rudy just sitting in the dunker spot for both rounds. It doesn't look anything like Utah because it isn't anything like, they aren't even trying to at all play like Utah, but that could happen against a Denver. It would happen against a Denver, because what they want Denver to do, or what Denver is going to do, is, they're going to bring Rudy up to screen for Ant, and then they're going to have Jokic and the other guy putting the double on Ant, and then you're going to play off of it. That was the whole story of the Wolves offense there. These first two teams, the Lakers and the Warriors, have been just squeezing in a tight shell, right? It could look, the opposing defense could look very different in the next round, or it will look very different in the next round if they get there, which will change Rudy's offensive role and allow him to be more impactful on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, that's an open question as to whether or not he will be, but it will be different in the next round. And then defensively, while it is different offensively, and he's playing more minutes, now he has more opportunity to be on the floor playing 30, 35, 40 minutes in a game, and you're feeling his defensive impact more. I just do think there's a possibility that we feel a lot more Gobert next round. And I think that is a necessity to beat Denver or Oklahoma City.
Right. And I like what you said about defensive versatility, because here's what I would posit is that Jaden McDaniels is better defensively this year than he was last year.
Yep.
Dante DiVincenzo gives you an aspect of perimeter defense that you didn't have last year. He's more disruptive. He's more of a gambler, and he can sabotage your defense on occasion, but it is an interesting piece to have.
Totally.
And Conley is not as good on defense as he was last year, but I have been impressed with Conley's defense against Golden State. He is starting to battle bigs again. By bigs, 6'4" guards, guys who are big to Mike Conley, and wrestle with him. Get down with it. And I didn't know if he had that reservoir left.
Part of the story of the season too is him getting more healthy, right? We forget some of that.
And part of what I maintain, as a longtime Julius Randle hater for most of this season, or at least, that's the way I'd certainly be perceived, by my constant agitation for Nas to replace him in the starting lineup. I have always maintained, since it became clear sometime around December somewhere, that he is a really good defender, on-ball defender of bigs, classic bigs. And I think I would put him on Jokic the same way they put Cat on Jokic if they were to play Denver and let Rudy be the lurker. I think he's ready for it. I think he could do it. I think that when I saw him play Zion, or when I saw him play, some of these other really big guys that Rudy, didn't handle as well. Rudy's good with tall people. He's not necessarily good with, really banging people. So, I mean, the point being versatility, defensive versatility. You've got a Randle and a DiVincenzo that you didn't have last year. Yes, you're missing Kyle Anderson. Yes, you're missing Karl Anthony Towns. Both of them had their usages on defense. But I think the package you have now just seems to work. And it not coincidentally, none of this is in a vacuum. They are also the players who give you the balance on offense. And so therefore, you have that effective blend. You have that effective whole. And I guess the argument I'm just making is we're both, I think, a little bit high on the fact that they're having a great playoffs because the roster is actually blossoming. I mean, players at the right time of the season, they're not fatigued. They are not fighting with each other. There's no resentments. There's no thinking about contracts. There's no thinking about rotation, jealousy.
The red flags that you and I were talking about or writing about all season have been taken down or to half mast or whatever,
I think so, yeah.
And it doesn't mean that those weren't red flags at the time. They were. I mean, the players said they were.
Right.
The coach said they were, but it does. They are all clicking into gear a little bit more, other than Rudy, But
even so, I mean, as you just said, Rudy's assuming his time is coming.
Yeah. And I guess I don't know if I'm assuming it, but he is for sure. You're right.
Right.
And it's definitely a possibility, and it'll definitely be a necessity.
Right.
To be.
Well, Tim Connolly's assuming it too, because he gave him a lot of money.
He did. Do we miss anything else from this game?
I think I do want to say I haven't praised Chris Finch in a while, and he just coached rings around JJ Redick in the first round. Steve Kerr is proven his skill, I think, in this series, not having much. I've really enjoyed the way Steve Kerr has tried to rally his team and has gotten his team to play certain ways that look interesting. But the vibe that Chris Finch has got this team in right now, we just got through gushing about how balanced and how together and how much they're playing for each other and how adaptable they are and how versatile they are. Chris Finch has pulled some levers in lineup switches against the Lakers. He has leaned hard into Randle and has proclaimed that this is one of his visions. And all of these things, he's got Tim Connolly has his back. He has Tim Connolly's back. Both of them are really good at what they do. And therefore, every single piece of the Cat trade looks twice as good as it did, with the possible exception of DiVincenzo just because of this last series. But throughout the season, watching what DiVincenzo could do, certainly Randle has blown away my expectations. And I thought the Pistons pick would be a year or two later than it's going to be. It's the 17th pick in the draft. It's 4 picks ahead of what they would have done if they kept the Rudy pick. And they have Utah's, first pick in the second round. first pick in the second round is like one of the coolest picks going because you don't have to have salary constraints on it. They have it, the organization, the state of the Timberwolves right now is remarkably spry and a lot better than it was just a month ago. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Chris Finch, in his own idiosyncratic way, criticized him for not calling timeouts or for not putting the hammer down with poise and composure enough, or whatever. Pick your form of dislike of Finch's methods.
Well, so the challenge for him this season was to get first and foremost was offensively to find spacing with a group that, you come in and you're 3, 4, 5 or Jaden McDaniels, Julius Randle, and Rudy Gobert. That in and of itself is a spacing.
It proved to be death.
Yeah. Well, it proved to work though.
Right. And eventually, right.
So what you had to do was then, you had to find that spacing. You had to find a way to be able to move the ball to capitalize on that spacing, or also to cover for some of your lack of shooting. And over the course of this season, I think they found better ball movement. They found a way to play with a greater pace. And these were slow things that he stayed persistent on,
right,
rather than making lineup changes to address spacing,
right,
or to address pace, or to address ball movement. I think they addressed it in practice, and they addressed it in the learning over the course of time. And then also, Ant became the guy, clear and simple, the main usage guy. And you had to find a way as a coach to get him to play decisively within a group that lacked spacing, that lacked ball movement, that lacked pace. I think those were his 4 real challenges: ball movement, spacing, pace, and decisiveness from Ant. And sometimes different one of those were firing or failing. But what's happened in the playoffs broadly is all 4 of those boxes have been checked, and those are boxes that we questioned,
right,
if you could even get in there,
right.
And he didn't, he didn't repeatedly over the course of the season. He believed in it, and I don't know how we can say anything other than this has been a really impressive performance by him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the way I'd like to end it.
Love it. Well, this was fun. Thank you for staying up late with me to do both of these post-game pods. We are heading back to Minneapolis tomorrow for.
Yep, you're a little earlier than me.
Yeah, that's true. Britt's got a late flight.
I'm on the flight that arrives at midnight.
Yes. We will. We'll be back after Game 5 to discuss either the closing of this series and moving on to the next one, or the potential return of Steph Curry. There is still at least one chapter left in this series, and we'll see where this goes. But right now, they in their time in San Francisco, they took care of business and made it look like this series is over. But there is one more game to take care of. You guys can read. I don't know. Are you writing tomorrow?
Yeah.
You can read Britt over at MinPost.
Be a quote unquote gamer, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you'll have some time to sit back and rethink of it. We're literally recording this like right out of the press conferences, and I don't know how much this music was picking up on this recorded the whole time here.
Watching.
The
crew have fun.
Yeah. The floor is being taken apart out there as we stare out over.
They needed music to do it.
Not naturally. Well, you can read Britt over at MinPost. Read his gamer tomorrow. By the time you're listening to this, and I will be back after Game 5 with. I don't know if that's for you or what that's going to be, but we'll do a pod after Game 5 to wrap the series up.
Showing, do you think?
I don't know if Kyle's coming on, so maybe it'll be you or whatever. We'll figure that out, but we'll be back after Game 5. I appreciate y'all. Tuning into these after each one of these games, and we'll be back after Game 5. Till then, he's Britt. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah.